It's 3:30. I think we're gonna start. Welcome everyone to the Nest webinar. This is the second webinar, and in this episode, we will dive deeper into the world of citizen science. Before we start, if you have any questions, you can put it in the chat, and just during the webinar, and we will answer them accordingly, like either after we have 10 minutes spare for questions or in between. My name is Annet Veen, and I'm involved in the NEST project as a teacher researcher at Alpha College, vocational education. And today we're going to talk about engaging the community with citizen science. And to do that, I have invited Rosy Mondardini from the University of Zurich, which was a real expert on citizen science, and Juliëtte Boughouf, who is from Thrive, and she will tell us about their real-time experience. NEST is an international project aiming at simulating and supporting healthy living in local communities. NEST brings together public and private organizations, knowledge partners, and citizens, recognizing that promoting a healthy living requires a systematic approach. We have 4 teams. The NEST Consortium offers expertise in community engagement and citizen science, which we will talk about today, reflexive monitoring, sustainable financing and governance, and last, knowledge creation. And this expertise is used to support 5 local communities across 4 countries in their mission to improve healthy living. Well, today's webinar will focus on the interaction between citizen science and the local community in Rotterdam and how they used this in their combat against mold in the Rotterdam households. And before we start, I really would like to invite Rosy to talk about engaging the community and citizen science and what it is. Rosy, you're still muted.
Thank you, Annette. Yes, I'm Rosy Mondardini, and I'm the Director of Research at Citizen Science at Zurich. And in the context of the NEXT project, I'm a part of a group of experts that wants to help the communities, what we call the local ecosystems that are represented in NEST, with engaging local actors in their cities. And this can be families, can be business, communities, NGOs. And the idea is to engage them in the activities and the initiatives of the community. So engagement in this case is really trying to bring everybody on the table when you try to define an issue or find a solution for a particular issue, and make all of these different local actors collaborate with each other. And this is particularly important in health, because you cannot think about solving issues like related to aging or related to chronic diseases unless you keep the people affected in the loop. And also, it's tricky because you really have to involve in the community, help you find the balance between the interest of individuals and the interest of the community. So one way we use in NEST to engage people is citizen science. And citizen science is engaging people and communities in the scientific research process. So you may have heard in this case, we are talking about projects that, for instance, where people collect data about water pollution, or about the quality of air, or about noise level, or they can be mapping access to healthy food, or access to the possibility to practice sport. So it's really people engage most of the time into the collection of data. And the way this is useful in project like NEST, or for the communities that we are working with, is that sometimes you need to assess the issue that you're trying to solve in an objective way. You need to understand the issue better. And by people collecting data, you are really providing evidence for whatever the community is trying to do. And I think this is actually the case of Rotterdam and with the issue of mold, but I think Juliette will tell us more about this.
Yes, thank you, Rosie. Hi, everyone. My name is Juliëtte. Indeed, as Annet and Rosie mentioned, I'm from Rotterdam, the Netherlands. And maybe very shortly, in Rotterdam, we have a local ecosystem that's basically, I would say a combination where the municipality works together with social entrepreneurs, works together with impact investors, and tries to work together as much as we can with different stakeholders within the local ecosystem, but are still very much exploring the best way how to. I'm a co-founder of a think tank, so we're constantly exploring what are new ways to create impact on a very local level. And actually, from a lot of conversations that I had in Rotterdam, and also very specifically a LinkedIn post that I saw of one of a very, I would say, activistic doctors that we have here in the city, and that really works on street level healthcare, is that she put online a LinkedIn post where she was talking about that she now saw I don't know how many house where there's a big mold problem inside of it. And of course, this is a problem that I think most people know about in the Netherlands, but it really highlighted and put it also some urgency about how big this problem actually is. So imagine that you are basically forced to live in a house because you cannot move because of the housing crisis. You live in a house where there's a lot of mold, and that basically affects your health because it's really toxic to breathe this air. It's also very bad, of course, for the healthcare usually of children, which also leads to them not being able to go to school as often, which can, of course, in that sequence, enlarge unequal opportunities between different groups within society. And so this problem, it was mentioned again in LinkedIn, and I was basically thinking to myself, okay, how is it possible that in this day and age, we are still basically accepting that this is a reality for many different people? And of course, I first had to do some research to really find out, okay, is this actually a problem here in Rotterdam? How big is the problem? And I asked a few people, and I also asked one of my indirect colleagues, let's say. She works for an organization that is really connecting people on a street level, going to different houses, knocking on the doors with flowers, and basically asking people in vulnerable parts of Rotterdam, okay, how are you doing? So they have a lot of insight in what goes on beyond behind the door. And when I was asking her about this, so really kind of testing, validating that, is this an actual problem here that we face? And she said to me, you know, Juliette, I think this is the biggest problem that people in vulnerable areas are now dealing with. The fact that you're basically locked in a house because of the housing crisis, you cannot leave the house, there's nothing available for you. But also usually the people who are dealing with the problems don't have a voice that is loud enough to really be able to solve the issue with their with the housing cooperation. So that to me really triggered how big this problem is and how difficult it is to solve. And then in one of the project meetups, I actually met with Rosie. And I knew something about citizen science, but I also saw that, you know, we talk about engagement, but we also talk about citizen science. And I was like, Rosie, please tell me about it. What is actually the difference? Is there a difference? How does it work? And then also I went to her concretely and I said, you know, this is a big problem that we have in Rotterdam. I would love to be able to solve it with people. Is citizen science a way in which we can do that? or no? And maybe, Rosy, it's nice if you, from your expertise, then explain to the group what you so thoroughly explained to me then.
So basically, what we did at the time is something that what we usually do when people reach out to us in Zurich, for instance, with ideas for a project. And the first thing is really to see, to look at the different aspects that implementing a project like that would basically imply, or the consideration that you have to do, like before engaging in something like that. So the first one was really the more general one: is citizen science the right approach? Is like the data, are the data that this is going to generate going to be useful for the issue, for the cause? Are they going to be meaningful in terms of quality for actually understanding something about the issue? So this was the first thing. And usually, the way to understand that is really just to go online and look at, existing papers and literatures and see if in the past or in the present there are other projects that have tried or are trying to do the same. And this is what we did. We just went and really looked for all of the projects that existed and are existing. And we found, very interesting thing. The first one is that, first of all, it is true, and Juliette just said that, mold and dampness and moisture, they are consistently, related to respiratory health issues, both in children and in adults, and especially, like the part of society that is disproportionately affected are the poorest in the city. The second thing that we discovered is that, from the scientific point of view, confirming the presence, or actually even better, the absence of mold in buildings is a huge challenge. And that can be solved basically only with the help of citizens, with the help especially of the people that are living in these places. So another thing that we found is that these studies have been already performed in different ways in many places, and especially, I would say, in Norway, where there are a couple of studies that were very successful, and in the UK as well. And the way this happens in this project is people collecting samples. So either they do collect a sample of dust or a sample of mold, and then basically they send it back. And these samples are analyzed nowadays mainly with like DNA methodologies. So this exists. We have seen it and has been successful. So that is like very good. The second, now at this point, not second, but another aspect, once we have assessed that, yes, it makes sense to use citizen science, is that, yes, it has been done in other places, but you do need support locally. And so there are two kinds of support. The first one is scientific support, some researcher that is interested in your data and is interested in performing the analysis, because that not everybody can do, that needs a laboratory. But also support in terms of looking for other local stakeholders that could be interested in this kind of project, in this data. And this can be local community, patient association, can be NGOs that are actually fighting in the field of houses. So really we look together, and who else can join us? Who else can be interested in like supporting us? And then last but not least, resources. Again, there is this very wrong assumption that citizen science is somehow a cheap way of doing research. And this is not the case. The fact that citizens participate and help you is, first of all, because they have a common interest and they have benefits, but they do not, for instance, pay for sensors or pay for the analysis. So in this particular case, the idea would be potentially to have some kind of sensor that you use, and then you have to take whatever you collect and send it back. So you need support. And for this as well, somehow it was one more task for Juliette in the sense that we are happy to support and to give ideas, but basically we ended up doing a long list of homeworks for people in Rotterdam, because there is where the core team performing and organizing the project needs to sit. So basically after this, and like leaving, our full availability for any other kind of help, especially in terms of setting up the project, finding the protocols, that means really what citizens are supposed to do and how you explain and how you make sure about the quality of data. For that, we stay available, but most of the job basically went back to Juliette.
Juliette, can you tell more about what happened after you reached out to Rosy and what happened in your community?
Definitely. So I got back with some homework. No, I mean, we joke about it, but it's just to maybe give some perspective of how quick this actually goes. So I think within 1 week, I had my first meeting with Rosy, and then we just discussed basically what the options are and how we should approach it. And then big actions for me was, of course, to find the researcher that could do the lab analysis, and also secondly, to look into funds. And then Rosy, she had the task appointed to herself that she would dive into finding these methods. And really already 2 weeks later, we already made some big steps with it. So it went really, really fast, which was for me really easy, because in the conversations that I was having or trying to have to kind of build this coalition in which we could do this, the input that Rosy gave me, so the fact that there are already 2 methods that are kind of solid and already used and have been seen as successful in those specific contexts, the fact that I could use that in my argumentation for why this is needed and how it could be done was very, very helpful to me. So to really show how fast this already goes. Then for the other 2 parts, so in the context of Rotterdam, there's a big university, and there's also a few universities of applied science. And of course, the first hope or the first idea was to find basically a local researcher that could help to do with this analysis, to go both in the lab, but also to work with the people, with the inhabitants, with the families that are in the houses, to also explain to them how does it work. And yes, if we're going to use citizen science, so if we are going to ask them basically to give us data, then we should be really clear about what is the added value that we are going to give them. So this is constantly a discussion that I also had with Rosy, because I didn't want it, and I still don't want it to be a project where we only gather data and then maybe in the end we will solve the mold issue. No, it goes simultaneously. So we look into how can we find both the funds to help the people immediately in their houses, but then also how can we use the data, how can we use the research as a way to provide them with their own evidence so that they can have better conversations with the housing corporations. Well, the first conversations that I was trying to have with researchers had proved to be a little bit difficult. So there we see the different silos within universities, and if it doesn't immediately align with their specific research, then it becomes really difficult to fit it in. But I did find someone, and I just found him on LinkedIn. Coincidentally, I was at a location where this flyer was, and apparently we have some sort of like a mold mycology institute in the Netherlands, which is basically completely focused around mold. I followed them on LinkedIn, and I saw this expert, and he was the exact expert on indoor mycology, it is called. So basically the indoor growth of fungus. And I reached out to him, had a really good conversation with him. And immediately he told me also that within his research, he looks into indoor mycology, but he also said to me, the lab tests, they're quite expensive. So if you want to get money for it, be prepared to have it be quite expensive. But he told me, I have my study right now that's exactly focused on this. I'm still searching for houses. So if you could give me access to the houses, I could give the data, and that could work together like this. So also within, I think, a week and a half, that person was on board. And maybe for the kind of the last track, which is handy to explain, is the financial side of it, because of course we need to make this possible also in a practical way. And with the input that Rosy gave me, with the plan that I had myself for how this is going to help vulnerable families, but also using the name of the scientist to really be a part of this project, doors to funding organizations immediately opened. And right now we're still in contact with different funding organizations. I had one that is really enthusiastic about it. They cannot fund it directly, but they are now kind of the ambassador for this project. And now I also had a conversation with another fund, which is a very big fund in Rotterdam. And basically they invited me to write a proposal on how we could both help on the short term to really solve the mold issues within the houses, and then simultaneously see, can we use citizen science to gather the data, and then also helping them with jurisdictional support, I think you call it, law support, let's say, if they need the data to use it to actually take some bigger actions towards housing corporations. So I wrote the proposal, and now it's in the hands of the funding organizations, and they were already in the conversations very enthusiastic about it. So of course I hope that maybe even before the summer we can start with it. But let's see, fingers crossed.
Oh, Juliëtte, that sounds really good, and it's really nice to hear your story about how you used citizen science to come up to this already. Are there any steps for the future? Can you use citizen science more, or can you tell something about that?
Yeah, I think because in some places citizen science is being used in Rotterdam and in the Netherlands, but not a lot. So I would love to really start using it to also showcase, what the added value can be, both for researchers, but definitely also directly for society. So my biggest goal is, because to me, it's insane that we accept that there's mold in houses. The biggest goal first is to see whatever way necessary, we make it happen, that we can gather the data and empower the people to really take action within their own homes and from their own homes. And then putting so much effort on it that change will need to happen. And we can use that, of course, as a best practice for many of the other societal challenges that we have in Rotterdam, hopefully.
Well, thank you so much. That's really helpful. Rosy, is there anything else you want to add? We're heading towards the end of the time already, and I think we can continue discussing this topic for much longer. Is there anything else you want to add?
No, not really. I mean, I think really Juliëtte is doing an amazing job in Rotterdam, and it is from the point of view of citizen science, or from my personal point of view, better. It's really very nice to see when the impact of the project that you're doing can be as immediate as that. Sometimes we engage in citizen science projects that are way more theoretical, let's say, or that have an impact which is less immediate or less obvious on like the short time scale. While in this particular case, what is exciting is that a project like that could really have immediate consequences, at the policy level, at the advocacy level. So we are really happy to be of use.
Well, thank you. I want to thank you both for your contribution, and of course, everyone is participating. There is still some time for questions, if there are any questions. I'll open the chat. Well, good to hear that that's really practical. And if you have any more questions, you can always reach us through our website, which is nesterasmus.eu. And we will hope to see you for our next webinar. We will announce it on LinkedIn, and it will be about the sustainable finance and governance. And the week after, it will be about knowledge creation. So if there are any more questions, you can always reach out. And if not, then I really want to thank you for participating. And I hope to see you next time.